From Hong Kong, Chicago, and the city of Stoke-on-Trent, this is the Classic Lenses Podcast. Hello and welcome to episode 75. My name is Simon Forster and I'm joined by Johnny Sisson and Perry G. Hello, Johnny.
Good morning.
And hello, Perry.
Hello, good evening.
Good evening. Spanning the globe, spanning the time zones again. And just, let's start the show traditionally. And how's the weather in Chicago, Johnny?
Oh, come on. Really, Simon? Okay, hold on. Let me lift the curtain. All right, well, it is very sunny here today. Hold on, I lost my headphones going to make this happen here. It's very sunny here today. It's not humid, it's not horrible. It's very, very nice today. Good.
And Stoke-on-Trent weather is just normal weather, so nobody really wants to know about that. And I think what we're going to do, we're going to head straight over to Hong Kong now, because that's where all the interesting stuff has happened this week. So how are you doing out there, Perry?
Oh, I'm good. I've had a busy week photographically, a lot of things going on. So should I dive in? I have like 5 things I've been up to this week. It's been kind of wild. Because like in the summer holidays, my schedule is a little bit more like flexible, and this week just everything fell into place, which is super cool. So first things first. Just before we started recording, I just got back from a lens trade because I reunited myself with a lens that I sold. Well, I traded a couple of months ago, and I kind of regretted it. So I just repurchased a Zeiss ZM planar 50mm f2 because I had that for a while and it didn't see a lot of use, and I traded it towards a Leica version 2 Summilux 51.4, and I also picked up a 50mm f2 Summicron version 4, the version 2 Summilux version 4 Summicron. And I didn't really like the Leica lenses. The Summilux was too big, and the Summicron was sharp but kind of boring. So I got rid of both of them for a profit, and those healthy profits went towards reuniting me with the planar.
Nice.
I'm curious about the Summilux, and your main reason you gave there was it was too large. But how about optically? How did it perform optically?
Yeah, so I mean, it's a beautiful lens. I spend more time sitting there just kind of fondling it on my M2 than I did actually shooting with it. But it wide open, it's kind of soft and has that sort of Leica glow. Not too bad. Not as bad as like the 35 1.4 Summilux. And then stop down to around f4. It's crazy sharp, but the backgrounds were very sometimes weird looking. So I used it mostly for portraits, and often like indoor portraits. And one thing I would find is just like with the interiors that I was shooting, the backgrounds would look really harsh and really ugly. And that's one of the things that I noticed with a lot of Leica lenses that are very sharp. They have a kind of like harsh sharpness that I don't quite like, in comparison to something like the Zeiss Sonar, which is, I would describe it as like a much smoother or much like rounder sharpness, if that makes any sense.
So was it the Aspherical Summilux?
No. That lens is beautiful. But that lens is like, I mean, it's so expensive, and paying that much for a 51.4 is out of my reach. And I also think like, anyway, I really like that one though. The results, it's the only aspherical Leica lens that I like, because I've had the 28 Elmerit aspherical, didn't really like it. It had too much harshness. 35 aspherical Summicron, also harsh. But yeah, no, this was the version 2. So the version 1 was the chrome one, and then version 2 came in both chrome and black. So I had the black brass one with a E43 or E46 filter on the front. And just like, it's a hefty little beast. It feels really good in the hand.
The reason why I asked is because when I've read about certain lenses, many aspherical lenses are usually praised for their sharpness, but criticised for their, we can't say the B word, can we? Ooftah.
Yes.
So, would you? I just wonder what your thoughts are on aspherical Ooftah.
Well, I mean, it depends on it depends what you want, right? Because each lens is different. I don't think you can make a generalization about like aspherical lenses all having similar Ooftah or bokeh. The 1.4 is very smooth, but it's not super modern looking. The wider lenses, like, yeah, they can be a little bit harsh, definitely. And then the APO Summicron, which my buddy has and I've borrowed, which is just like an absurd lens. I think it also has fairly harsh bokeh. I don't know if it's any worse than the older lenses because, the Zeiss Sonar is gorgeous, right? And really smooth. But the Summilux, the V2, it depends on the background. Like, if the background is outdoors, so for example, I mean, this is really specific, but I think if you have like golden brown, like wheat or like tall grass in the background, the Summilux looks fantastic. But if it's indoors where there's like, things in the background that will reflect light in different ways, it looks really busy and not in that kind of nice, funky vintage way that I like. It's super distracting, so I didn't really use it.
Right. So, well, the only experience I've got in terms of a classic lens, aspherical, is the Canon 50mm, the FDL 50mm f1.2, which, in my view, it's the sharpest, wide open, super fast lens I've ever used. But the overall appearance of the outer focus area against, say, my Konica 57 1.2 and a few other lenses, I just felt it was just too busy compared to those other lenses. So and that's usually put down to that aspherical element, whereas because the other non-L lenses don't have that aspherical element in there, and they generally have a smoother out of focus area.
Yeah, I don't know if you can make that generalization, but I do think that is a common feature on a lot of, like, you've got like the Voigtlander 35 1.7, which has an aspherical element in it, and I don't like it for the same reason. But the thing that I noticed the most is what you get in exchange for sharpness. To me, you get harshness and flatness, if that makes any sense. And so I tend to not really enjoy, particularly Leica's aspherical lenses, with the exception of that 51.4, which is just stunning.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
Okay, so I have that lens back. The reason I picked it up again, by the way, is just I realized that I don't have any 50s that are just like totally normal and relatively fast. The closest one would be like the top core 50 2.8 Heliar, but even that doesn't render. Sometimes you want a lens that just doesn't do weird stuff, right? That's just like sharp, reliable, doesn't focus shift, and the Summicron was supposed to do that for me, but I like the planar better. I just really love the ZM lenses. And then I have this trip. I'm going on a 2-week road trip at the end of July on the east coast of Canada, and I realized that Hong Kong has a lot of light pollution and air pollution, and so this is going to be like the first time in a while where I've got a good shot at shooting the Milky Way.
Oh yeah.
So I've been. Well, I don't really have any lenses that are suitable for doing this because you need something super wide and something that is very different from all of the other like classic lenses that we like to play with, because you really can't be, you really can't have something with like a lot of coma or a lot of weird edges if you're going to be shooting like stars. So I've been talking to Lawrence Dunn, who does a bunch of astrophotography, and also just doing a bunch of research about different lenses. And it's just the ones that are well corrected are just so obnoxiously huge. So I think I've settled on the Laowa 15mm f2 for Sony E-mount, which it really pains me to purchase a lens specifically for like my Sony A7R II that I can't use on other bodies. But you know, I want to shoot this and I don't have anything. I thought about using my Nikkor 24 2.8 AIS. I thought about my Zeiss CY Distagon 28 2.8, but they're not quite wide enough for the whole Milky Way, and like the edges don't really, they're not really up to scratch. Yeah, it's annoying, right? Because it's like a lens that does the opposite of what I like in every other lens for normal day-to-day shooting. So
it's a special use though, right?
Yeah, exactly. Special purpose lens that I'm going to use for this maybe a few times in the future. I'll probably sell it when I get back.
But it's not just really that is arguably a special use that you're using it for, but I think this just goes, for me, wide angle lenses, I'm just not interested in character. I just want them to show what's in front of me. It's tend to be using it for something like architecture or some form of landscape, and for that, usually for that kind of photography, you're not trying to draw people's attention to the center of an image. You want as much detail and as much, I don't know, it just seems like you just want your shots to be as clean as possible. So that's a reason why I'm not a fan of old and classic wide angle lenses, and I'm talking wider than say 24mm here.
Yeah, totally. I mean, the two that I like the best that I have are the 15mm super wide Heliar and the Voigtlander 21 f4 color scope R. But on a Sony, they are going to do weird things on the edges, and they're not quite fast enough for what I want to use them for. But that's so big. Like, can't they? I just wish they could make a smaller one, Because like for APS-C, so for Fuji, you've got the Samyang 12mm f2, which is super sharp, and I have it. It's super sharp. It's not obnoxiously huge, and I would totally use that. But I have to bring my Sony because there's one specific lens that I want to use for shooting puffins. But it's a Canon autofocus lens that I have to use on a Metabones adapter. So like, we're gonna have a car, so I figure I'm just gonna load up on the gear this time.
Well, hey, what about the so one lens that comes to mind, and I'm just spitballing here because I've never really done astrophotography because there are no stars in Chicago.
Welcome to the city, right?
Yeah, exactly. What about the Zeiss Flectagon, the 20mm 2.8? Does that work or no? I mean, I'm thinking age wise, it's probably obviously not as well corrected as a modern lens, but it seems to like it would fit the bill. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, it could. I think that is a focal length that could work as well, because for Milky Way, you really want like 24mm absolute minimum. That's not a bad suggestion. But the other thing is, like, the Sony A7R II has this reputation for having a sort of star eater effect, where longer than 4 seconds, its noise reduction does like wacky things to stars. So I figure the faster a lens I can have, the better. So an f2, especially one as well corrected as the Laowa, will probably suit the job a little bit more.
Mm-hmm. I'm with Simon. I'm with Simon on that one for something like that with a wide angle. Just get the nice, clean, modern lens.
Yeah, I'm just looking on my Flickr albums because I've got a few shots with that lens that 20mm Flectagon 2.8, but the thing is, you've got to be shooting wide open, haven't you? Really? And I think that's really the key. But it looks like it's performing pretty well actually on my A7 Mark II. In the corners, and I've got a few that are wide open. The problem is the ones that are wide open. There are things relatively close, and it's not my point of focus, so it's hard to tell whether there's actually something bad going on at the edges or not, really. But it looks, from what I can see, it's doing pretty well. The only Astro I've done it with a Samyang, the 40mm 2.8. That does a pretty good job.
That's one I've considered. I was actually leaning towards that, but it's so obnoxiously large. And the one the one that they make for Sony E-mount, it looks like they just took the DSLR version and they made it longer, basically built in an adapter.
Yeah.
And just that approach to lens design irks me. So I was like, no, screw that.
Well, I think you're absolutely right on that. But it's a decent lens, and you can move it around from camera to camera. I mean, mine's in. I think mine's a Canon. I think it's a Canon mount, or is it Nikon? I think it may well be Nikon. Actually, that would have been the more sensible thing for me to have done with it, isn't it?
Yeah, I think my previous top choice was the Samyang 1428 in Nikon F mount, so that I could at least use it on multiple bodies. But might as well get the best tool for the job, and it seems like the Laowa with that extra stop of light is just going to give me a little bit more versatility.
Yeah, I've seen some great shots with it as well. It's an excellent lens, no two ways about it.
Yeah, plus the key thing is how it's going to render like point light sources on the edges and not just like sharpness and all that kind of stuff, right?
Yeah.
Well,
right.
Actually, that's probably a good time just to mention that post that I put up yesterday in our Facebook group, and specifically the podcast group rather than Photography with Classic Lenses. So that's Classic Lenses Podcast Facebook group. And this was going back to something I mentioned on last week's show about my Pentax 58mm 2.4, which is a Heliar lens. It's a M37 thread lens. And it's a favourite of mine. I've always liked it, the look of it. It's quite sharp in the centre, and then it gets interesting at the edges. But I, as I mentioned last week, I took a photograph looking at the nightscape at Madeira from a hotel room, and I felt that on first impression, I thought that the lens was faulty because the points of light at the edges were pretty shocking, and it was okay in the centre, and this has led to a fair bit of discussion. And I know Johnny has accused my lens of being faulty, but I'm still not entirely convinced if that's the case. And as we speak, Jason Lane, when he gets to work, is going to fire up his computer and his lens software to see if the images that I've produced are consistent with how he thinks that lens will perform, because he's got the software that he can tap into details of just about any lens, and in particular, it simulates what points of light do. So assuming they can show what points of light do at the edges, then it might replicate what the results of my lens. But certainly one of the things that Jason has said is he believes that lens is pretty much too fast for its own good. Which to me sounds like it's my theory that that was the reason why Pentax discontinued it, is sort of holding true. And you can argue people don't go around taking points of light. That's fair enough, but people do take photographs of night scenes on the tripod, and I think if my lens is performing as it was built, then I think that will disappoint quite a few people.
Yeah, I mean, looking at the pictures, it's hard to tell from Facebook's compression, but it almost looks like the edges are smeared on the Heliar shot.
Okay. This is one of those things I'm actually describing this on a podcast. But they almost look like certainly on mine. Obviously I get to see the proper photograph, but it's almost as if like they're forming cones, almost like a loud hailer almost. So you've got narrow at one bit, and then it flares out, and so it just looks like a loud hailer.
Yeah, but I don't think that's necessarily super unusual, though. I have lenses that'll do things like that. I mean, even a lens that I think we universally consider to be a wonderful performer, the Pen F41.4, it'll exhibit a similar effect in the corners, even stop down a little bit, and it's not really what it's intended to do, So I don't know. I mean, the only thing that surprised me about that is it seemed like the center sharpness, if that was stopped down, didn't extend further towards the edges. Not that the edges were bad. That didn't really surprise me. It just surprised me that there wasn't more, clean rendering further out towards the edges, if that makes sense.
Yeah. I mean,
And I think. Oh, go on.
I was just going to say, of course, it was a lens. I was expecting Johnny to say it really, but it's a lens that's designed to be used on film and not on a Sony.
No, it's not even that necessarily. Yeah. It just, I mean, even regardless of the recording medium, I just felt like it looked. I would think it would be sharper or cleaner further out, but yeah. I still wouldn't be super surprised to see that at the edges even stop down a bit.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, because the two things that strike me are the little yellow house in the bottom right also looks pretty fuzzy, not just the point light sources. And the other thing to bear in mind is, of course, the Kurtagon shot that you've got in comparison. That's a shift lens, so its image circle is significantly bigger.
Yeah.
So you're probably seeing more of a kind of sweet spot of that lens anyway.
Yeah.
Assuming you didn't shift it around.
No, I didn't, and. As I said in the chat in the about that photograph, I wasn't specifically comparing the two lenses together. I just thought it was interesting just to show that this is what the scene could have looked like, and with a particularly good lens. But yeah, I felt it was quite shocking in the corners without a shadow of a doubt.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see what Jason comes back with on that.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So watch the space, or watch the space in the Facebook group. So you've got even more to tell us as well, haven't you, Perry?
Yeah, the next three all relate to street photography. We've had a couple more protests here in Hong Kong. There was a big one yesterday, but I didn't go out there because it was raining. But a couple of days before, there was the second iteration of a mom's protest. Now, this is particularly interesting because, like, the protesters who have been facing off against the police have primarily been young people, and there's been a lot of discussion locally about, this entire trend. But basically, after the first violent protest and after the tear gas came out, Carrie Lam, Hong Kong's chief executive, she came out with like this press conference, and she made a bit of a boneheaded comparison of her with like mothers. And she was like, "Oh, I have two sons, and like I can't give them everything they want because I know better." Blah 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 blah. And so this giant moms group in Hong Kong wrote a letter in response saying like, A, you're not our mother, and B, we don't think tear gassing your kids is a particularly good parenting strategy. So there have been two mothers protests, which is really not a demographic you want to piss off, right? And they've been these large peaceful protests of like predominantly mothers just gathering downtown and like expressing their support. But it's been very visually striking because they've been holding up their phones and like turning on the light and like singing songs and waving these banners. And so it has like that really cool sort of repetition effect, similar to what you might see at like a football match where everyone has their scarves held up at the same time. So I went down there to shoot a roll of CineStill at night for this mom's protest. And I was really excited because I was using two lenses that I very rarely use. I only really use for nighttime situations, and because they're lenses I really like. They're the ZM35 1.4 Distagon and the Nikkor 85 f2 LTM. So I'm down there shooting. It's super cool. It's a very moving protest. I get home, I develop the roll, and honestly, like I told myself a while ago that if I have C41 shots that really matter, I should just send them to a lab because they're going to get the color right and they're going to be able to control the temperature better. Well, it turns out that I should stick to that advice because my developer was dead. Yeah. I developed the roll and it came out and it was just blank, and I was so sad about that. And lesson learned, I guess.
Feel for you.
Yeah, been there too.
Yeah, I mean, like we've talked about this before, right? But the people who say that C41 is easy or easier than black and white, I just don't get it. I mean,
bullshit.
I struggle so much with temperature, and even if I develop it perfectly, I never seem to be able to scan the colors correctly either. And oh man, it's just a hassle. So there's a lab nearby that does it in an hour for pretty cheap, and I think I'm just gonna go and use them in the future.
I think Mike Gutterman is one of those people that says it's easier than black and white. So yeah.
Oh, it's bull.
Oh, if that's
Yeah,
I can black and white in my
same thing too.
if Mike says it, what can I say?
Well, Mike, get in touch with me and send me all of your tips and secrets because I just can't. I can't do it. Hey Johnny, I mean, with your sous vide, are you finding that? I don't know if you've used it yet, but
I haven't even broken that some bitch out the box other than to hold it up to my crotch and think, wow, this thing looks like just a giant sex device. Thing is ridiculous. No, I will. Yeah, I will get that out and use it. Actually, I was hoping to use it today, but I'm really hoping that makes the process easier. Perry, I have a theory on this. I think people who develop a lot of black and white and are really into consistency. I think that's why color processing drives them nuts, at least me, because, if you say it's got to be 103 degrees or fine, 95, you can use other temperatures with C41. But, I want the water to really be that temperature for the entire time I'm developing, not get it there and let it fall and know it'll be okay for 3 minutes. It's like, no, if it's supposed to be that time. So to me, I think if you're really used to being consistent with your process, C41 is a real pain in the ass because it's much more exacting. It feels like more is going to go wrong if you're not consistent. So that may or may not be true, but that's the way it's sort of presented. So I think it gets in your head that if you're not exactly on with everything, it's more difficult. And I know it bothers me because, I get my temperature up to the right temp and it goes over, and then you have to wait for the temp to fall back down for an hour. That drives me bonkers,
And you also have to bear in mind like the temperature of your developing tank, because that's
exactly. Right. So that's what I'm saying. If you're really going to do it with a level of consistency where you've tempered the tank and then et cetera, it's a royal pain in the ass. Because
sorry, go on.
No, I think that's it. I mean, it's doing it at such a high temperature, which is why I've been experimenting with lower temperatures, in the 90s range, 90-degree range, which you can do. You just extend the time. To me, it's easier to keep the temperature consistent at those levels, because that's the other thing that really bothers me is letting the tap run at 100 and something degrees for an hour. I mean, you're wasting a lot of water. You're wasting, whatever you're using to heat the water. It just seems extraordinarily wasteful to me. So maybe this sous vide thing will, be the magic bullet. I hope it will help. Oh, that and the chemicals are disgusting. Okay. You know what? Oh, yeah. I do a little sip of Rodinol before I develop every single time. I've done that for years, and it's not nasty.
That explains a lot.
Yeah, it tastes good. It's healthful. It doesn't feel disgusting if you get it on your hands. But C41 chemicals are just gross. They're slimy and disgusting and black and nasty and I actually had one time when I was developing C41. The lid on my tank was due for replacement, and it was sliding off while I was processing because the chemicals are just so slippery and nasty. So I actually had the lid come off partway through, and I had to slam it back on. So just color processing is annoying. Oh, and don't even get me started on stabilizer. Come on.
Yeah, my stabilizer always grows mold within days of mixing it.
Which is the whole point of stabilizer, right? Is to make sure that stuff doesn't grow on your film.
Right. It just grows on the stabilizer instead.
Yeah, right. It's like a decoy.
But on gross chemicals, I actually, for black and white, I actually have to wear gloves now when doing it, because I've discovered that HC110, if it touches my skin, it just starts to destroy my flesh. I don't know if this happens to other people, but I just get really horrible contact eczema from HC110.
I actually stopped. Part of the reason I started shooting digital was that I had done processing for so many years that I got really sensitive to the chemistry. So I mean, to the point where even if I didn't really get the liquid on me, I was still getting itchy and stuff. So I basically stopped doing it for a while when I was heavy into digital. And yeah, that's definitely a thing too. So I think taking appropriate healthful precautions is a smart thing. That, and I mean, right. Again, if you have a little sip of Rodinol every time you develop, I think you develop a natural affinity for it, and it no longer does that. So that's.
I think Graham from Sunny 16 gets a hard time from Rachel for doing like cyanotypes in his kitchen. I think drinking Rodinol is significantly worse than that.
No, not at all.
But do let me know if the CineStill thing works, because
I will for sure.
Because Camera Film Photo in Hong Kong is having a big sale right now until the 15th.
Oh, cool.
And if it's good, I might pick that up, because the one that has worked for me, C41 kit, is the Rollei Digibase C41 ready to use kit, which is like a 3-bath instead of a 2, so the bleach and the fix are separated instead of like a single Blix, and it's designed to be used at like room temperature. And longer times rather than at 38. So the times are just like written out on the little weird chemical bottles. And that's worked really well for me in the past. It just takes a really long time and doesn't last very long.
Well, and I will say the CineStill kit, if you go to CineStill's website and if you get their kit, they have times in there all the way through down to like, I think almost room temperature. So you can do it with other... you can do it with pretty much any C41. It's just that the prevail. I think they do that because they feel like people are going to less likely to screw it up if the development time is only 3 minutes versus, 10 minutes.
But the results aren't the same when you do it at a lower temperature for a longer time.
I don't know. I mean, I haven't really noticed a difference that way, but I mean, maybe there is some.
Yeah, because I've read that document, and I think it states explicitly that if you use lower temperatures, you're going to get like less contrast and less saturated colors or something like that.
Could be, yeah.
Yeah. But, I mean, Simon, how good are you at C41? Any insight to share on our failures?
I've done it once, and I ended up with a blank roll. And that was with new chemicals.
Okay, so it's all three of us.
Yeah.
Oh, Fetterman, you're wrong.
Well, I think on my case it's just pure incompetence. So I think my opinion's invalid on this one.
Well, yeah, like I don't half-ass C41. Like I have a Swedish friend named Carl, who is an engineer, and he specializes in like building air conditioning systems to be efficient and like equalize temperatures. So I've had him literally give me the formulas for like, if I have the temperature of the room, if I have the temperature of my tank, if I have the temperature of the chemicals, like how much I have to adjust each one so that they'll like equalize, right? I mean, I haven't implemented anything that he told me, because I was like, there's no way I'm doing all this crap.
But, well, thanks anyway.
But, I've gone through the theory, so I don't half-ass it, and I still just can't get consistent results.
I haven't ever had a problem with getting consistent results. It's just the process to getting there to me is too annoying. I mean,
no, fair enough.
You know what I mean? I can get really great. The film, my developing looks good. It's just annoying. And even the scanning, I mean, I don't know. I've just got a workflow that works, but I don't find it all that difficult to get things right as far as color goes. But no, I can see why it's difficult. I mean, it's way more tempting to just never shoot color film and just shoot black and white. But there's just times when you want to shoot color stuff. So I don't know.
Yeah.
I think the key, Perry, is to just shoot E6.
And just send it to a lab.
No, develop it at home. You can do E6 at home.
Oh, I've never actually tried E6 on my own. No.
Yeah. So this has been, of course, summer is like half over now, right? But this was my summer project. I was going to shoot a ton of E6 and, save it all up and develop it all at once. But, it hasn't really been sunny for 2 months. So there has been very little incentive for me to do that. But maybe now that it has been nice for 2 days in a row. Maybe it means I should just shoot some E6. I don't know. But anyway, E6 I think is way easier once you have it processed. I think it's way easier in terms of color workflow because the color is either right or it's not. It's very easy to tell, and to me it's not as difficult to scan it and digitize it and make it look right. I think it's much easier.
Yeah. Okay. Fair enough. I mean, oh man, this is a topic we could go on for ages, right? Like whenever I get uneven development on C41, it's just like there's no saving this because you've got like streaks of blue all over the place. And I'm like, what is causing this? I don't know. Yeah. So with that in mind, I went out and I shot color film again, but this time I sent everything to a lab, and it wasn't at a protest. I went out to a sort of village on the outskirts of Hong Kong called Tai O to shoot some. Well, I originally went to shoot like the sunset and shoot some landscapes, but we got there early, so I was shooting some street photography at sort of golden hour, and I had I was shooting with my Bronica S2, and I had what was I shooting? Ektar and Fuji Pro 160 NS, and then I shot a roll of Velvia 100 for the actual landscape part, and the funny thing was, like, number one, I'm an idiot and I forgot to bring a strap. So I'm walking around Tai O with my girlfriend, like holding this camera that is so heavy and just building up my biceps and losing gallons of water and sweat. But then the other thing was, like, when I was shooting, people didn't pay any attention to me, even though, like, it is literally impossible to be subtle with this camera. But, you know, we were talking about this earlier, but I think it's that looking down through the waist level finder that literally just puts everybody at ease when I'm like standing in the middle of this narrow street photographing every single person who rides their bike or like runs past, and like nobody cared. They were just like, you know, they know when I'm taking a picture because here, let me play the shutter sound for you. We had a request from, I think, Ben Reynolds, right? Listen to this. Let me just remove the back dark slide. This is not a quiet shutter. Listen to this.
It sounded like you just trapped something in there, something that was living that's not anymore.
Yeah, it sounded like you snapped a wooden ruler in half.
Yeah, it's like a Norse thunderclap, right? But I was pleasantly surprised with both the results and just how easy it was to shoot on the street with this.
Yeah. I think the waist level finder thing really makes a difference. It's just, I mean, it's not an accident that Rolleiflexes are great street cameras, or I mean, you know, Yashica's would you name your TLR, but I think that's part of it for sure. Is just that you're looking down instead of pointing at someone. I think it's just part of it's a natural, instinctual human reaction when something is staring at you to feel a little uneasy, you know?
Yeah, that eye contact of a photographer staring at you can be pretty off-putting.
Yeah.
Yeah, I had that similar experience. So, as you know, I'm not really big on street photography, but I had a recent trip to London, and I had a tiny amount of time to try and do some, and I didn't do many at all, to be honest. But the fact is, though, I was looking down through. I was using the baby rollie, but I felt, it just seemed like the world wasn't as bothered about what I was doing. Now that could have been about the fact that I was in London. I don't really know, but to me it did actually. I did feel more comfortable doing it with that with that waist level finder.
Yeah.
And it's also a combination, I think, of what you were mentioning a couple episodes ago about shooting with a camera that's obviously not a modern camera as well. So the combination of that novelty factor plus the fact that you're looking down probably just makes people look at you and go, well, he's a weirdo. I'm just going to ignore him. Right? Nothing threatening here. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, on that shoot, there was a funny moment where we were walking by this part of town, and then a group of photographers walked past us. And this woman who I know, a friend of mine, was in that group. And they were... So I started chatting with them. And one of them, this other woman who I'd never met before, she was shooting with a Nikon Z7 or Z6. And on it was the optical block of a Leica 90mm Summicron, the first version, mounted to a helicoid. And I pointed at it and I was like, yo, that's the optical block of a 90 Summicron on a helicoid, isn't it? That's cool. And she looked at me with this expression of like, what? What is going on? How do you know what this thing on my camera is? So that was pretty fun.
Perry, speaking of street photography in Hong Kong, I hear you had a meetup with Captain Cook this week.
Yeah. Devlin Cook, he's been to Hong Kong a couple times the last few months, and we've been trying to meet up, but our schedules didn't mesh. But he was here for a longer layover this time, so we met up 3 days in a row, which was super cool. So day one, we just met up to chat, and he had his Olive M3 that he was getting CLA'd over here. So I met up with him after work, and the second day, after we kind of parted on Wednesday, we left and he was like, we should actually go and do the hobby. So I was like, yeah, totally. So we met up on Thursday afternoon and actually went shooting. And because, he told me that when he comes to Hong Kong, he always shoots the same areas. And I asked him like, oh, where do you shoot? And he was like, oh, he only shoots the areas that are near the camera shops. because when we weren't shooting, like basically he was dragging me around to like every camera shop that I knew about that he hadn't been to yet. I'm trying to strike up a rapport with everyone. And we saw some crazy stuff. Like I sent you guys a picture of one of their rare lenses in one of the shops, which was a Schneider Kreuznach 51.5 Xenon in original LTM mount. And I was just holding this thing going like, whoa. So yeah, we were gassing out a little bit, but then he had his M3 and his M6 with him. And when his M3 was getting adjusted at a repair place, he brought his M6 to come shooting with me. And I brought my M2 that day, and with the Konica Hexanon 35mm f2. So I showed him a couple of neighborhoods in Hong Kong that I really like to shoot, and we just spent the whole afternoon taking photos. And at the end, he basically started gassing out really hard about the M2 because its viewfinder is just so beautiful and clean. So then the next day when we met up, he kind of dragged me all over the place looking for a good deal on an M2, which he didn't find. But yeah, so that was a lot of fun. So thanks for that, Devlin.
Oh, just gonna say, let me just bring you back to that. I'm just interested now. So you're saying that he prefers the M2 viewfinder to the M6?
Yeah, for a really simple reason, which is the M6 viewfinder has frame lines within frame lines. Mm-hmm. Right. So if you have the 35mm frame line, it also has the 135mm frame lines in the middle. Right. For the 28mm frame line, you have the 90, and then for 50, the most annoying one on the M6, the 50 has the 75mm like dotted frame lines inside. Whereas the M2, you have 35, you have 50, and you have 90, and like they appear on their own, and it's glorious. Yeah, it's a thing of beauty. And my M2 has a particularly bright viewfinder. Like I've had two M2s, and this one is much brighter than the first one that I had. So yeah, he was playing with it, and he was just like, he wanted one so bad that he made me take him shopping. I mean, Simon, you have an M2, right? You've been shooting with it. You must know what I mean about the beautiful frame lines.
Yeah, yeah. I haven't really been doing very well with that camera, have I? I think I'm on frame 35 or 36, and I think it's been there for a very long time. But this is the thing. I as I've already said, I'm not a street shooter, and I'm struggling to think about when to actually use this camera if I'm not shooting street, because I think, well, I'll just go use an SLR or something else, or go to a medium format camera or whatever. But I just can't. I struggle to see the point of the camera. I love it. It's beautiful. I mean, I pick it up, I hold it, stroke it, do all of those things. And I don't want to get rid of it because it's so lovely. But I just don't seem to be motivated to use it at all.
You're still on your first roll?
Yeah, it's been in there for a year.
Oh my god! So wait, what is it? Why do you feel like you can't go out? I mean, yeah, the Leica, it really excels at, I think, the two types of photography that you do the least, right? Like street photography and portraits of people. Mm-hmm. But I mean, it's the perfect camera with its size to slip in your bag and just go shooting street around, Stoke-on-Trent, right? Or if you're in other parts of the UK.
Well, I think that's one of the issues, because I don't particularly want to go shooting in the town centre of Stoke-on-Trent, and I think this is going to apply to a few places. I mean, I'm not saying that it's an unsafe place or anything like that, because it absolutely isn't. But you just feel. Like when I was in London, I just felt like that was a place that was going to be a lot more accepting to people taking a photograph of strangers, whereas in locally you just feel that's just not, it's just the wrong thing to do, and therefore you don't. So I just feel like if I do want to take that kind of photography, I've got to go a distance to do it, and I don't really have the opportunities to go to these places that are more tourist friendly. I think that's perhaps the best way of putting it. So arguably I could go out there and try it with my TLR maybe, but I don't think I'll feel any more comfortable using that than any other camera. So
the thing with shooting street is there are so many different approaches you can take to it, right? There's like the obnoxious Bruce Gilden style where you're flashing people in the face. You've got kind of like Anil Mystery style street portraits, the flaneurism. And like there's all kinds of different like philosophies and approaches to it. And, for me, part of the appeal comes from, I think, trying to capture the spirit or ethos or vibe of a place. But, even I still very frequently get the apprehension about shooting people and kind of not knowing how they're going to react, because I have had some negative reactions. But one style of street that I think might be fun, if that's your worry, is one thing that I really like to do is just find a composition, like almost like an urban landscape that I really like, set up, pre-focus, set your camera up, and then just wait. And when the right action happens, then you fire the shutter. And, if people notice you, just don't take your eye away from the camera and just keep shooting the scene, because then they'll just assume you're shooting something behind them or something like that. And and that way I think you avoid the source of apprehension that you're talking about, but you can still at least finish the role.
Yeah, no, I think that's a fair point. And I think when I actually took a few shots of that nature when I was in London, so I was at the railway station waiting for the train, and I found myself somewhere to sit down, and I realised, oh, this isn't a bad spot, and I'll just wait until things come along and happen. So that's probably actually most of the shots that I got there. And I do actually like that style of street photography, especially when you can find juxtapositions of, although it's getting a little bit of a cliche now, although you can argue, so what, where you've got this beautiful model of a photograph, and then there's somebody walking past eating a pie or something like that. So you get these juxtaposition photos, which there are quite a few of them out there, but I really like them. I think they're just fun photos.
So when it comes to shooting street, I think, Simon, you're right that every place is quite different. And in Hong Kong, one of the things that I find challenging is like the language barrier sometimes. But Johnny, I'm curious, you shoot a lot of street as well. What's it like shooting in Chicago and the interactions you've had with people? Because I mean, Chicago has such a rich history of street photography.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a pretty easy place to do it. Quite honestly, people don't seem to be bothered too much by it. I mean, there's a type of person that's instantly pissed off by it, and there's plenty of those. But I feel like I'm fairly non-confrontational the way I do it. I don't really tend to get in people's faces too much. I tend to like just stay in a spot and let things play out. I'm probably more of that style than the kind of get in your face style. So I haven't had a lot of bad experiences in Chicago that way. A few, but for the most part, not. So, but I think a lot of it is just kind of familiarity with the place is a big part of it, and just the way you kind of carry and present yourself, and just your body language and openness. And if I'm ever unsure about a situation, I just smile at someone, and that's usually enough, and everything's okay. So I don't know. But that said, I mean, I tell this story a lot, but the time I tried to do the same style of street photography in Derry in Northern Ireland, and approached it the same way I would in Chicago, and people were just like giving me these looks like, I'm going to kneecap you, which they probably were. But I mean, but then again, context, right? Context in Chicago is very different than the context in Derry, where they're used to being surveilled, literally, and probably now, but not with good intentions either. So I think so much of it is just the place, the particular place, and I can understand what Simon means about why it might be difficult in his environment. That's the other thing, is just there's so many people in Chicago passing by, especially in the Loop. There's literally 1 million plus people that come to work every day in the downtown Chicago in this relatively small area, and then most of them leave and go home. So it's this big temporary daily home for people, and I think it's a place that people are very familiar in, unless they're tourists or whatever. So there's this sense of it being just a very familiar place to most of the people that are walking around in it, and I see a lot of the same people every day. So it's I don't know, it just seems like it's an easier environment to do it by nature, and I think that's true. I think it really, like I said, really depends on the environment and the place.
We were talking earlier about using TLRs to shoot street, and I know that Vivian Meyer used to frequent your shop. Yeah. Did you ever hear her talk about, or learn about how she shot street back in the day?
Well, I mean, the owner of the shop has talked about that. I never heard her talk about I never heard her talk about photography. I mean, the funny thing is, I didn't realize it was her. I didn't realize I was seeing her the many times I was in Central Camera at that time period. I was just like this lady who looked kind of like a bag lady, which in American colloquialism is sort of like not necessarily a homeless person, but someone who is a bit eccentric and, tends to wear odd clothes at odd times of year and that sort of thing. So I had seen her in there quite a few times and never heard her talking about photography. And I remember seeing her on the street, but never seeing her take photos. But yeah, the owner at Central Camera, he knew her quite well, as did several of the people who worked there. And there were only a few people that she would work with. Apparently, she was very particular about people that she would talk to, especially men who worked at the shop. But there were a couple that she liked and that she wanted to work with. And but to hear the owner kind of tell the story about her, I think because her photos seem so candid, there's an assumption that she was sort of like sneaking around and, taking photos very much on the sly. And I guess she very much said straight out that wasn't her style, that she felt it needed to be respectful, and she would ask And she, it was a different approach that I think, because she was a woman, she was smaller, she seemed unassuming. I think a lot of things worked in her advantage that way. But by all accounts that I've heard, she had a style that was very much the not in your face style of doing it. And that to me makes sense looking at her images, because they look very candid. And even if the person being photographed was aware, there was probably a sense that she was very either an eccentric or not threatening. Or part of it too is I just think it's the era. I think people just didn't care in the 50s and 60s the way they do now, because there wasn't a sense of living in a surveillance society, which is what we have now. And I think people have every right to be annoyed if someone sticks a camera in their face. So so I think a lot of it was just the era as well.
Yeah. And I guess Vivian Maier didn't become famous until posthumously, right?
No. Yeah, exactly.
So there wouldn't have been that, if she walks into your shop, oh, it's Vivian Maier. I'm gonna interview her.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. I mean, it would have been now, of course, but no, back then, like I said, I was in the shop with her, many times as a customer and didn't realize she was anyone. I mean, you would have had no sense of that. The other one that I think I've also mentioned that I don't know that anybody really knows outside of Chicago is Gary Stochel. And his photos are, to me, I think his photos are amazing. And he kind of had a moment of fame similar to the Vivian Maier effect back in the was it 95 or 2000? I guess it was the early 2000s, 2005. He had this kind of moment where he was sort of discovered, right? And I don't know what's happened to him since then. I haven't seen him for several years, but I used to see him all the time in the Loop walking around with his Leica. I would see him almost every day. And I talked to him a couple times, and he was very unassuming. It's the same sort of thing. Like the way he carried himself and the way he just sort of the way he worked, it was very, very non-threatening, I guess is the only way I can think to say it. So much of it, I think, is just like body language. It doesn't matter the type of camera. It doesn't matter the color of camera. It's much more just how you carry yourself and how people seem to relate to you.
Absolutely. I mean, that last point is so important before any listeners start gassing out and going and buying a Rolleiflex or a Leica to go shoot photography. Because I was talking to Devlin about this. We were talking about some of our favorite photographers, and he was telling me that he's got this thing where he likes to find out what gear his favorite photographers shoot with, and then he'll start getting gas for that stuff. But I told him that I used to be like that too until I read about what Dorothy Lang would shoot street photography with. And Dorothy Lang, for anyone who doesn't know her, she's the photographer who shot in the 30s, I think. And she has her most famous picture is the migrant mother portrait, where if you get a chance, looking at her contact sheet is really interesting, because you can see that she starts that photo from quite far away with a photo of their tent. And then she gets closer and closer and closer until she makes that final image. And I think recently there was a bunch of her work that was either censored or not released until recently, and it's quite topically relevant. But anyway, the point is, she would shoot all this kind of documentary street photography with 3 cameras. She shot with a 4x5, I think a Graflex, a view camera, and an 8x10.
Yeah.
Which is right up your alley, Simon. Yeah. So once I found that out, I was like, all right, you know what? If she can shoot street photography with an 8x10 and a view camera, I'm gonna stop chasing after what did Cartier-Bresson shoot with? I'm gonna go buy one of those.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
So Simon, maybe that's the answer to your woes.
I just need to go out with a bigger camera.
Yeah.
I'll feel safer with a bigger camera, and that'll probably do the job.
Defend yourself with the
I'm just
tripod.
picturing Simon in Stoke-on-Trent under his dark cloth and having kids like throwing beer bottles at him and stuff.
I need to defend my city a little bit. It's, yes, I don't particularly want to go shooting the street, but it's a good place with nice people. We just don't like having cameras pointed at us. And the other part, it's me as well. Let's face it, it's me. I feel really uncomfortable, and there are many people like me, of course. And who knows if Animal Mystery ever decided to come up to Stoke, he'd drag me around to the centre, which is town called Hanley, and I just imagine him just meeting people and everybody being really, really charming to him and posing for their pictures, and they'll then just like look at me and say, "See, Simon." That's all you have to do. Just talk to them. Say nice things, So it's me rather than the place. I'm sure it is. Anyway, let's move on and do an update on what we were doing last week, because we had some challenges set for us, and I think we should get an update on where you are, Johnny. And your challenge was to take some bokeh photographs, because that's something that you've been studiously avoiding. You won't even use that word, and it's also been sort of widened a little bit for you to be going out and taking close-ups of flowers and things. And notably, it was picked up that you've only really half-arsedly picked up this challenge, because I did actually ask you to do this with a digital camera, and you flat out refused to do that, and you would only do it with a camera that you just like had a roll end in there, that you were just thinking, well, I need to do something with this, so yeah, I'll just do that challenge. So how's you been getting on, Johnny?
So I did finish off the roll in my Petri Penta. I threw the Primoplan on there, the 58 1.9, and I ooftah'd my cat in the window. I ooftah'd my cat. So I shot it at or close to wide open. I took probably at least 6 pictures. Oof. And they are waiting to be developed. So I did actually do it. I don't have anything to show yet for it, but that's most of my photography anyway, is just doing it and never showing it. So so I have done it, and I'm still thinking I might actually just put it. No, actually, never mind. I'm not going to do that. I would shoot some more on film, because that lens is horrible on the Fuji. Maybe it's better on, but that's not true too, because again, it's just me. It's not the lens, it's me. I can't get good pictures with that lens, but because I know people had shot it on full frame, shot it on a half frame, they can get just fine pictures, and I just don't like anything that I get with that lens on anything I've shot so far. So we'll see what the film shots look like in black and white. Maybe those will be more pleasing.
In black and white?
Yeah.
I was gonna say that too. Yeah.
Oh. I'm not gonna have a color roll in that camera. You want me to shoot color too?
I mean, only a couple of days ago you hadn't actually done anything. So and now you've turned up today and you said, yeah, I've done it. I've taken the 6 shots. I'm thinking, well done, Johnny. This is great stuff. And now we're learning that they were in black and white as well.
Well, so. Of course they were black and white. So I don't know. Maybe we'll see. I suppose I could find. All right. Okay. I have a roll of Portrait 800 that's been sitting in a half frame camera for Johnny, about a year.
No, exactly.
I could finish that one up.
No. Put it on the Fuji. Put it on the Fuji.
Oh, but it sucks on the Fuji. It just does.
Just make it work.
Oh,
make it work.
All right.
Yes.
I'm not using a goddamn focal reducer though. Actually, I sold my focal reducer, so that solves that problem.
Yeah, that's it. It's a statement of fact then, isn't it?
Yeah. There's all kinds of flowers in the neighborhood. I'll go shoot some tiger lilies. How's that sound, people?
That sounds
I'll go shoot some tiger lilies on my Fuji with the the Primoplan.
Excellent.
And you can all see how bad I am at this and why I don't do it. No, okay. I don't know where this conception has come from that Johnny doesn't like flower photos, because I've never said thing one bad about flower photos. And furthermore, I think that I would even use the B word, because that's what it is in this case. Bokeh photos of flowers are the perfect example of how to do bokeh photos, because there's actually a subject in the frame. As opposed to a picture of nothing but bokeh. So yes, to me, flower photos with lots and lots of bokeh is perfectly appropriate, because that's what the whole point of that subject, that style of shooting is. To me, it totally makes sense. So I have no problem with those kind of photos, actually. I'm fine.
And I'm going to defend Johnny here, because back in episode 69, when I did Desert Island.
Harry, how do you remember this stuff?
Well, he was there on that one.
I was there on that one. Yeah. And before I joined, I did listen to this podcast quite religiously. And I was telling Simon before we recorded, I have a couple of favorite episodes that I go back to when my list of podcasts, like, it gets exhausted on my commutes. The Bob Rotoloni episode and the Jason Lane one are particularly good. But anyway, so back on that one, when we were talking about the Taylor Hobson Reed lens, we were searching the Photography with Classic Lenses group for anyone who had shared pictures with that particular lens, and no one had. But in that search from way, way back many years ago, there are a bunch of pictures that you posted with a Taylor Hobson, I think a C-mount lens.
Oh, yeah. The C-mount.
Which were flower photos with some crazy psychedelic color filter on them.
Yeah.
And there were a ton of these.
Yeah. I love that lens.
So,
I'll shoot that.
Simon,
I'll go shoot that today on digital if you want. That's an easy one. I love that lens.
No, it's got to be with the Primoplan.
Oh, you bastard! I love that lens.
But take those shots anyway. Take both. That's the thing. Take both lenses.
Oh.
Will that psychedelic color filter fit on the Primoplan?
No, it's like, so that lens, I should probably just post a picture of that lens. It's this little C-mount lens that has that Kodacolor, and it's the old Kodacolor, which was, we could do a whole topic on this, but it's the old Kodacolor process where it shot on black and white with a color filter, and then you projected with the color filter the black and white film, and you got color film. It was amazing. So it's that lens on a Fuji. So it's actually on a larger sensor than it was intended to cover. And so you get all the crazy edge stuff, but it's very sharp in the center. And you get all the swirliness, and because of the color filter, in color, shooting in color, you get that crazy color stuff to it. So I love that lens. I love shooting it on digital.
What lens was it specifically?
It's Taylor Hobson Cook Cine lens. I have to find it, but it's got with a Kodacolor filter. It was specifically meant for use on a Kodak Cine camera for shooting the color process.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah, it's really cool. Yeah, it's really cool.
Yeah,
and I stumbled upon that lens at the infamous estate sale that I went to, where I bought all sorts of amazing stuff and also missed all sorts of amazing stuff. But I got it at that estate sale for like $10. So yeah, that was a major find. Yeah, I'll drag that thing out if that'll make you guys happy. Well, it'll only make Simon happy if he's forcing me to use the other lens too. I know that. So
yeah, I mean, I only brought it up as concrete evidence that you do not, in fact, have anything against flower photos.
No, I do not. I really don't. Speaking of being unfairly maligned, or fairly in this case, do you?
We're talking about me or the lens.
So Simon, do you want to talk with us about your Tessar?
Yeah, Tessars. I've been having a great time with Tessars. I mean, just yeah. I'm not sure if you quite grasp what I just said there, but I've been having a great time with Tessars because I was actually out shooting Tessars last night, and I had a really, really good time. I think they're fantastic lenses. I was in a forest and there's a stream, and got my camera set up, and I had a choice of Tessars that I was using. I was shooting FP4, and so great lenses. What can I say?
Which
on your 4x5.
Yeah, of course, yeah.
Yeah.
So
that was not the bigotry you were assigned to overcome.
That's right.
So we're now bringing it back to Tessars on 35mm or full frame between 45 millimeters and 50 millimeters. That range of Tessars, is that the one you mean?
Yeah.
Correct.
Yeah, it's been killing me. I've got a specific Tessar here. I mean, it's not called a Tessar; it's an Industar. It's not really an N because I think that the diagonal goes the wrong way, but I'm still going to call it an N anyway. So it's an Industar N-26 M, a Fed lens, LTM 39 lens. And I've got it on a helicoid, and I think, well, I'll just go out into the garden and get the minimum focus down because Tessars are rubbish at minimum focus usually.
What?
So, yeah.
What are you talking about?
Of course they are. Or is it just? Oh no, it's because it's an LTM lens. Okay, all right.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. So the M42 Carl Zeiss Tessar, yeah, I think you can actually get quite close with that one if you really wanted to. But no, I've just really struggled. I've really struggled. It's just so dull. I mean, I can go out and do some. If I was inclined to do some street shooting, I could do that. I could stop it down to 5.6 or f8, or go f8 and be there, and it would do a perfectly good job, and there'd be absolutely nothing wrong with it. And frankly, you probably wouldn't be able to tell the difference between a Tessar and a planar when you've stopped them down for that kind of shooting. But that's not really what we're about, is it? We like lenses with character, and it just hasn't been doing it for me so far.
Well, how about you shoot it relatively like a normal lens? You could shoot you got kids and dogs and all sorts of stuff. You could shoot at f4 at 8 feet away and see what it looks like.
Well, kids
you could even put it on your M2.
Yeah.
I was going to say, well, kid, yeah, and how long is it going to be before you see the photos? Well, kids and dogs are important shots, So I use a proper lens for that. I'll keep on trying. The whole thing is trying, and I tell you what, I think it's partially because of this particular lens, which I'll be selling on eBay quite soon. So I won't do it down too much. But it's fine for what it is. But if you want to sneak around the garden doing bokeh shots of flowers, it's not good. But I was racking my brain for. I think I've asked people, say, okay, so there are different Tessars out there and I'm damming all of these Tessars with the same brush. And people say, yeah, but there's lots of different ones, and nobody's actually come back to me and say, give me an example of a good Tessar between 45 and 50 mil.
Okay, well,
I've actually thought of one, but you tell me, you give me your suggestion.
I was going to suggest a Xenon, or not a Xenon, Xenar. The Schneider Xenars are my favorite Tessar variants. I don't know if it's the glass of the coatings or whatever it is, but to me they are the best of the best in terms of color and rendering. So that's where I would go.
I would go with the. Oh, sorry. Go on.
No, go ahead. That's it.
I would go with the top core 53.5.
Oh yeah, nice.
Actually, I've just remembered I've got a what is
You
it?
must have a Schneider Xenar somewhere.
No, I've got a Xenon, but I haven't got a Xenar. And obviously the Xenon's much better anyway.
That's different, yeah.
Yeah,
Different lens.
that's right. Yeah, it's not a Tessar. And but I do have an early 35. Is it a 35 2.8 Tessar on contacts mount?
Yeah.
Yeah, I've got one of those.
You do have that lens. That's right. I forgot you. Yes, you do.
And I think I've actually taken 2 good photographs with that lens. So I might just have to revisit that one. But the other lens I had in mind that actually might be interesting. Well, it's not might be interesting. I know it is actually a decent lens, and I like it. And it's the Industar 61 LZ or LZ. Not there are 2 of them on those. The 61L, that's it, LD, not that one. That's pretty much, I think, more or less the same as this Industar N26, I think. But no, the LZ, which is got, I don't think it's a true macro lens, but it you can get very, very close with it. And I've used that lens a couple of times, and whenever I've used it, I thought this is nice. It's how would I describe it really? It's pretty sharp, but it just renders really nicely. Overall.
Is that the one with the crazy star-shaped aperture?
Yeah, that and the Volna 9. They're sort of separated at birth, I think. I'm not entirely sure if the Volna is also a Tessar or not, but the Industar definitely is. And yes, I think it might be around about 5.6 or something like that. You get these weird star-shaped things. It's a Christmas bokeh. Yeah, it's great for Christmas shots of your Christmas tree lights and things like that. So that's I do actually quite like that lens, but that's pretty much the only one, and maybe this Tessar, which I don't even know why I've kept it, to be honest. But yeah, I'll mount that this week and see if I can get something out of it, and I think it'll be okay as well, because I mean it's a very old lens, so it's bound to be quite quirky. And I think also, by the standards of the day, it was one of those lenses that was I think they pushed the design to get it to 2.8, and I think the 3.5s are generally considered to be sharper, but they're just 3.5s, and obviously 2.8 is better because 2.8 is better. But I think that's just a bit of vanity.
Simon, if you are going to shoot that lens, don't shoot star-shaped bokeh shots, because you got to appreciate the character of the Tessar and not like the weird aperture.
Exactly.
Well, I haven't got the LZ anyway, so I can't. I've had a couple of them, and they've gone. But so I can't. Don't worry. There's going to be no strange bokeh. Although I can do really strange bokeh, because I can always. I've got some Waterhouse stops for my my Petzval 58 f1.9. So because you change the aperture by dropping different size Waterhouse stops in there, usually circular, but they also supply you with snowflakes and hearts and stuff like that. If you feel so inclined.
All right, I think we have I think I have the perfect lens for Simon, and I think that Simon, and I'm just looking to see if there's one available really cheap that you can get, because I'm almost positive you can get this lens for under $50. Yes, okay. So you have a DKL adapter. Yes. Over there,
yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Okay, so I think you need a Retina Xenar 50 millimeter. There's a 45 millimeter and there's a 50 in DKL mount, and I think you need to get one of those, and that's what you need to try, because you can get. You can definitely get this lens for in the $50 range, and I think that would be the one.
I'm looking at one now, 45 mil. $24.99. That seems cheap. There's a catch. Yeah,
it's probably
nasty. Well, no, it's been ripped off. I think it's just the lens that's been ripped off a fixed camera.
Okay, yeah, if it's got to be a DKL, you need a DKL mount.
$39.99 for a Tessar. Not sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'll keep my eye open.
Okay.
Because these things do pop along, and I wonder if Yeah, no, I was just thinking aloud there. I was thinking if we actually do have one of these knocking around on the camera, which I just couldn't be bothered.
That's what I was wondering if you might just have one around somewhere.
Yeah, you never know. Well, if I have, I'll give it a go. But in the meantime, I do have that contacts lens, so I'll give that a go this week. So that's Johnny and I, and so let's move on to the main event now, because what started all this off was was 2 weeks ago when Perry was given a list of his budget lenses, all of which were stretching the term budget to its limit, and then Perry then came on to say, I love old lenses and cheap lenses and things like that. You know, some of my best friends are old lenses, and and just generally protesting way too much. And so last week we invited our listeners to suggest cheap lenses that Perry might find interesting enough to actually enjoy using. And the way we did that was we asked people to contribute on a post that I put up in our Facebook group, Classic Lenses Podcast Facebook group. And we have had quite a few suggestions. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to run through these suggestions, and we need to whittle this down to a short list of 3, because once we've actually got this short list, we're going to put a poll up in our Facebook group, and people can vote on the lens that Perry's going to use. Now, some of these lenses, the first 3 that I'm going to read out are lenses that Perry's already got, so these aren't going to count. So we'll go through those first, and then we'll do a deeper dive into the lenses that Perry hasn't tried. Okay, so the first lens that came in from Leo Lai was the Pentacon 50mm f1.8, which is a good shout as a cheap, interesting lens. But Perry's got that one. Do you use that one, Perry?
I do not.
But you own one. You have it, but you don't use it. Okay.
I've had it for about 12 years.
Yeah.
I've taken it apart, but I've never actually really used it seriously.
See, that's a lens that I often recommend to people as a great budget lens or a great starter lens for classic lenses, and I don't use it myself, and I've got one that I don't use, and I really should, because I mean you go over onto Photography with Classic Lenses, onto that Facebook group, and some amazing photographs have been taken with that lens.
It has loads of character, and it has an absurdly long focus throw. At least the M42 one that I've got with the button press that stops down the aperture. Yeah.
Well, there you go. It's I think you should just get that out and have a go at it anyway. Perhaps go and take some bokeh shots. And the next one, which has been suggested by Andy Shields, is the Jupiter 8, which is a lens that you have.
Yep, have it. I really like it. It's good.
Yeah, and interestingly, just come in just in time, Eric Sluice has also suggested the Jupiter 8, except he's suggesting that you should be using the pre-1954 version. So I'm not too sure what the difference is there, but the fact is that you already like the Jupiter 8 and you've already got one. I think that pretty much rules that one out. But thanks for chipping in there right at the end, Eric. And then the last lens, and this came as a bit of a surprise to me, that you've already got one, came in from James Giordano when he suggested the Lomo T43, which has been ripped off a Smina camera or a Cosmic camera. But you've already got one.
I'm going to send you a bottle of ginkgo supplements to help with memory, because on episode 58, I specifically brought up this lens as an example of a cool lens that I bought just to see what it was like.
Even I remember that, Simon. Come on.
Yeah, exactly. And Carl had one too. I think, Johnny, do you have one?
I've got one.
I think I remember saying I nearly had one and I want one. Okay, I'll edit this out and then nobody will ever know.
No, that's cheating.
Okay then. Okay, so as we all know, you've got a T43 lens, and James should have known that anyway. Of course, being a listener of the podcast. So they've all been ruled out. So we have some other lenses now which you have not tried. And again, I'm reading these things out in the chronological order that they came in. So Leo Lai had suggested the Pentacon 51.8, and which you ruled out immediately. And he then suggested the Konica 40mm f1.8.
This is one that I would actually be really keen to try because I have played with some Konica AR lenses and quite enjoy them. 40mm, I think I might actually like it on my Sony or a kind of SLR style body, because now that I've had the Leica CL for a couple of weeks, I've been carrying it around in my bag all the time because it's so small. And I love the camera and I really like the 40 Summicron, but I'm finding that like the difference between 40 and 35 on a rangefinder is very, very noticeable to me. Like when I'm framing stuff on the 40, I'm finding that either I'm just cutting a little bit out more than I would want, or like I just wish I would have like 5% more width. And it's a little bit shocking that it's such a difference, but like I'm really noticing it. So I think that maybe on a Sony where I don't have like the ability to see outside the frame lines like you do on a rangefinder, it'll be a bit more fun to play with. So yeah, that's definitely one that I would put on any shortlist that we have. That'd be cool.
I'm quite disappointed that Johnny didn't come in with a comment that you just said there. So he's obviously that.
I love that. I love that lens. I think that, to me, I would love to see Perry try that one and see what he thinks of it.
I don't think you quite got the bit I was talking about there, Johnny. But we'll move swiftly on.
No.
From that 5% extra thickness. But no, the
at least when I make dick jokes, everyone gets them, Simon. Jeez.
But the 41.8, I really like that lens. It has some places when you read up about it, they'll talk about it as being one of the sharpest lenses ever. It's not. But it's a really good lens. It's nice to use. I mean, the aperture ring's a little bit iffy on them. In fact, that goes with most Konica SLR lenses. But it's a sweet lens, and it can be bought pretty cheaply. Interestingly, we've said this kind of thing before, but I find the cheapest way to buy that lens is actually stuck to a camera.
Yeah, totally.
So look for auto reflex TCs and usually get one of those stuck on it, and nobody wants the camera, but the lens is great.
It's not super cheap here. I've only seen a couple listed when I searched earlier, and they're all like £100.
Oh right!
Wow.
Okay. Well,
I mean that might be why they're not selling, but but I'm sure I can get something at a decent price. But don't forget, once something's been picked, we're going to buy this lens for Perry, who's going to enjoy it. And then once he's enjoyed it and taken great photographs, we're going to give it away somehow. We haven't worked out how we're going to give it away yet. So, but we will find one of these lenses. Okay. So, don't tell me how to feel.
Okay, so that's the Konica, and we already know that Perry's up for that one at the moment. Then we have the Yashinon. This is from Mike Novak, friend of the show, who was sort of a guest on the show, and then the show got completely hijacked. We really need to get Mike back, and
yes, we do.
Especially if he's got a decent mic this time as well, so it doesn't sound like he's talking down some kind of plastic tube to us. So we need to get you back, Mike, on the show, that is. And the Yashinon 50mm f2. Have you got any knowledge of that lens, Perry?
No, this is the first I heard of it when he mentioned it, and I Googled it, and it looks cool. So I'm totally up to try this lens. I mean, it's got that sort of like chrome and black mix. So yeah. I'm up for this.
How about you, Johnny?
I really like that lens. I have a thing for, I think we discussed this, but I think 50f2 is the magic sweet spot for SLR lenses because they're perfect. So I'm a big fan of that one. And again, there's another one I think Perry should really try.
Yeah. Of all the lenses that people suggested, this is top of my list of ones that I would want to try. Yeah.
And I'm pretty sure this is one of those ubiquitous Tomioka made lenses, because I had a Meyer lens, again 50f2, looks near identical to it, and that's one of those lenses that I wish I never sold. It's a beautiful rendering lens, so excellent lens, excellent choice there. Moving on from Mark. Oh dear, it's a Dutch name. Sorry, Mark. I'm going to have a go at it now. I actually had to go practicing this earlier and I could do it. I've completely forgotten how I said it. But Mark Kleijmans, I'm sure that's absolutely awful, but there you go. I'm not going to repeat it. But thank you for your suggestion, Mark. I can do that bit right. And he's put in a comment there that it's cheap and super swirly. So the Yashinon 50mm f1.8. Thoughts on that, Perry?
I'm very lukewarm about this lens. No.
How about you, Johnny?
I don't really have anything to add on that one. No.
Yeah, I'm at the lukewarm stage on that one as well. Although it's better than the Tessar. Yeah, that's about as good as I can say about it. Really, I've not.
Why did you? Sorry, go on.
I was going to say I've not actually tried that lens, so I could be. We could be all three of us might be maligning it awfully. It could be absolutely brilliant, but yeah.
Yeah, I mean, Cosina knows what they're doing, sort of sometimes.
Yeah,
well, they do
at least now. Yeah, they do now anyway.
Yeah, they learn by the mistakes.
Why did you skip the Domiplan?
That didn't even make the list, did it? The Meyer-Optik Domiplan. Well,
it's not too expensive.
I suppose. That was a bit of censorship on my part, really. So you got the Domiplan, and
what's wrong with the Domiplan? It looks cool.
It's it's okay. It's okay, and I've used one, and it is unfair of me to have not put it in this list. It's one of those lenses for me that it comes to life when you put it on, and this is the same goes with Carl as well when he used to use it. It comes to life when you put it on the extensions. Because the minimum focus is it's very, very poor. But if you use it on an extension and do some macro level work of flowers, and you've got some points of light in the background, then it's pretty much a miniature trioplan. So and it's a triplet lens anyway.
Yeah.
So you do get those that onion ring or soap bubble bokeh that you get with that. So so Domiplan that has to be on this list somewhere.
It doesn't get any more classic than a Cook triplet.
Yeah.
No, that's right. Okay, so moving.
Did anybody suggest I had one on my list for Perry. I just didn't want to, as a host, didn't want to butt in. But did anyone suggest the Fuji 55 2.2, which I know it's a little bit outside that? I bet to me a 55 is a 50, but it's basically an overcorrected Tessar. And all kinds of hell breaks loose with that lens. And I was wondering why nobody suggested that one if we're talking about interesting.
No,
I've actually seen quite a lot from that lens. It's weird looking.
Yeah.
Like really not the lens itself, but the pictures. They look weird.
Yeah. Yeah, they do.
Yeah. I don't know what I would shoot with that.
Yeah.
Well, our listeners have not suggested it, so unfortunately it stays to one side. But yeah, I think that would have been it was an interesting suggestion though. So yeah. So our next one from friend of the show and best vintage lens man, Ricardo Bayon, has suggested the Schneider 75mm enlarger lens, and in particular a full-bladed one. So you end up with square-shaped you get bokeh squares with it.
I refuse.
Ooh, that's interesting.
No. I think the whole point here is like cheap, missing that phase of experimenting with like sort of cheap SLR lenses. I have done my fair share of dicking around with like enlarger lenses, projector lenses, viewing lenses, broken lenses, and sticking them on helicoids. So I actually want to try one of these like, actual cheap lenses that are supposed to be used for photography. So I'm sure this would be fun, and this might be something that I would do just in my own time. But I don't think a 75mm enlarger lens fits the brief. Plus, it might not even, with the right helicoid, it would hit infinity. But no. Square bokeh macro? Oh, what is that?
I personally think it's a great suggestion.
Geo macro.
Yeah, I've done
Geo
some.
bokeh.
Yeah, I've done. What's that? Minecraft bokeh, I think I called it on one of my shots.
Yeah, Minecraft.
Yeah, and there are a few of these enlarger lenses. It's not just the Schneider. I think it's probably a Kompanon. I think 75, and it's probably an f4 maybe. I suppose. But there's also 50mm and the Meyer-Optik Görlitz enlarger lenses, the 50 and the 75, can also have full blade apertures now, and that can is really important if you're going to start looking for one of these things, because the majority of these lenses do not have full blade apertures, and they may be marked up as exactly the same, whether it be 4 blades or 9 blades or whatever it is. If it's not mentioned in the description, you'd need to look at the photographs and hope that somebody's actually taken the picture with it closed down. And if they haven't done that, then it's worth sending an email to. We're talking about buying on eBay here. It's worth sending an email to the seller and get them to describe the shape that's made once you actually close the aperture down. Because, like I say, unless somebody does that, there is no way of telling whether it's a square one or a regular one. But I personally, I thought that was a great suggestion, and mainly because it's not just about using an enlarger lens. It's about the actual effect that you can get, and the other part of what you can do with these is not just have square bokeh, but you can, if you, depending on how it actually fits on your camera, you can unscrew it a little bit and turn it into diamond bokeh, and so on and so on. So yeah, I think that was a good suggestion and worthy of consideration.
Well, I think part of the point is like I kind of want a lens that I can both dick around with and also use for like normal shooting as well to see what it's like. And this is a lens that I'm sure I will have a lot of fun dicking around with, but that's it. It will be a dicking around only lens for me.
Yeah, and that's point taken. And talking about dicking around, the next one is by Christopher J. May, is the Sima Soft or Sima Soft 100mm. And Johnny, perhaps you know a lot about this lens, and perhaps you might want to describe it to people who are not entirely familiar with it.
Well, this is the infamous flashlight lens. Imagine a plastic trombone type arrangement where you just kind of slide it back and forth with no aperture, and it's basically just two tubes that you use to focus. So there's no helicoid. You just kind of it's like a push-pull zoom lens, but you push-pull to focus. And it does have essentially like a Waterhouse stops, the equivalent of a Waterhouse stops, where you just kind of slap these discs in there, right? But it's I guess, Perry, if you didn't like the Tham bar, you will absolutely love the Sima Soft.
No,
I think it's a brilliant suggestion.
Dude, I cannot go out onto the streets of Hong Kong with a ribbed dildo lens.
See,
I'm like gonna be moving my hand back and forth. No.
This is what it is. You're afraid to be seen with the Sima Soft. That's what it is. Okay.
Yes. Like I'm only gonna take pictures indoors in my apartment with this thing. I'm not going outside with it.
It's a perfect lens to use behind closed doors, Perry.
Yeah.
I'm just looking at them on eBay right now, and they for whatever the reason they've not quite managed to get to the UK, which could cause us a bit of a problem there. But oh dear, yeah, it's f2 as well.
Yeah,
100mm f2.
100mm f2. And who doesn't like a fast lens?
Exactly, and there's one here. It's pristine, clean condition. Looks essentially unused.
I mean, for anything that shape, that's the description you want.
Disinfected is the other description you'd like to get with that lens. Yeah.
Here's the description here. Photographers love the ethereal quality of the soft focused images produced by this lens. So yeah, I mean, there you go. It doesn't get more of an endorsement of that. That's on at $49.99, and you can even make an offer on it as well. And it's in the States, so yeah, we could pick this up. So
I have one of these at the shop. There's another one that showed up, Perry. I'm sure I could get the employee discount and get this lens to you, no problem.
Yeah.
No.
Okay, well, let's. I think it must be said that you're having your input on these lenses, but the ultimate choice of the choice of the shortlist is actually going to be down to Johnny and I, and and then it will be down to our listeners as to which one is actually going to get used. So thank you.
Oh, you're going to put it to a vote?
Oh yes.
Yeah.
So both live in countries that are evidence that voting does not yield.
Absolutely. Yeah, a referendum, the worst possible.
Everyone's going to vote for the Sima Soft now. And then I'm going to go to jail for looking like a sex predator.
I'm sure our listeners will make the right decision should this get onto the short list.
Yeah, you're gonna get a Sima Soft named Bodie McBoatface.
All right, okay. So two more lenses to go through, and the next one by Rob Jameson is the ultra wide and slim. Now that's something that Johnny knows all about.
Yeah, I think I even offered to mount you one up for use on an LTM. So there you go, LTM mount version of the Vivitar ultra wide and slim.
Yeah, I think I would actually have a reasonable amount of fun with this lens, but I don't know. I'm just like, I don't know. I'm just gonna use it like a point and shoot, right?
Yeah, it's basically a focus free. They say it's 22 millimeters. We talked about this a little bit. I think maybe on an actual Vivitar ultra wide and slim, like mounted on that camera, it might get that wide angle of view, but remounted on LTM and set to the correct focus distance and everything, I don't really think it's truly that wide. I think it's somewhere between 24 and 28. And they say it's about f11, and I think it's also not quite f11. I think it's more like an f16. So yes, an f16 24 millimeter lens is pretty much what I think it is on an LTM camera.
Yeah, that could be fun. I mean, I have an external viewfinder for that, sticking on a
it gets super flares and not crazy sharp and does funky things. So there you go.
Okay, well, let's move on to the final suggestion by JP Holden. And this is a lens that I nearly sold him, and that's, I don't know if I talked him out of it, because it's the Minolta 50mm f1.7.
Yeah, I've actually tried this lens a bunch because there are quite a lot of them locally, and my buddy has one. So probably not. It's a good lens. I really like the like metallic grip on the focus ring.
Yeah.
But I mean, I've used this lens before.
Yeah,
but I don't have one. So,
It's too nice. It's just too normal. You know what I mean?
Exactly. Normal is definitely the word there, because I mean, ultimately these are lenses that you've got to get something out of, aren't they? Really. So yeah. Okay, Johnny. We need to pick 3 lenses out of this list, and I'm just judging by your feedback. I think that we may be in agreement on what the 3 lenses might be. I will give my short list, and then you can tell me if you agree with that, or we'll discuss whatever it is we don't quite agree on. So the first one on that list, I think, is the Konica 40 1.8. Do you think that belongs on there?
Totally agree.
Yep. Okay. And the next one being the Yashinon 50 f2.
Yep.
And quite obviously, the third one that I believe should be on there is the Sima Soft.
Oh my god!
I like Perry too much for that. I just don't think we can do that to him.
No.
I think he's right that this is going to turn into a farce episode of the Classic Lenses podcast, Perry and the Sima Soft.
Yeah,
I would love for Perry to use this lens, but I don't know.
Yeah, I don't think it fits the brief. Plus, it's too long. It's I said preferably
he's got a point there. It's well outside the parameters that we sort of agreed upon. So
you know what? If I get a chance to try this lens independently, I'm happy to do that.
Okay, so this is even better, folks, because Perry, if he makes it to Chicago, now there is no way he's not leaving Chicago without a Sima Soft, because I'm going to make him take this lens on his trips to Canada, and he can do astrophotography with a Sima Soft. It'll be perfect.
Okay, then, Johnny. So what's your suggestion then for the third one?
Oh man. I think we might be the Domiplan. I mean, did you say you've shot that one, Perry?
No. I have not.
He hasn't. Okay. Well, yeah.
Okay.
I mean, I'm thinking, yeah.
Yeah. Okay. I can live with that one too.
All
so
right.
we'll start the poll off probably tomorrow. And we'll announce the winner, or if you're in the Facebook group, the Classic Lenses, we're going to do this in our podcast group. So photography with classic. No, what's our podcast called? You're not helping on this now, are you?
I forgot to. Oh,
yeah, Classic Lenses podcast. Yes. So our Facebook group, Classic Lenses podcast, we'll have a poll. And the winning one is the one that we're going to pick. So and Perry will be shooting with in the near future. So and we'll announce that next week. So that pretty much gives it. Entries will close on Monday afternoon, sometime UK time. So who knows? There might be a runaway winner. It might be quite close. It remains to be seen.
Interesting. Yeah. Should be interesting.
Okay.
Cool.
Right. I think we're pretty much done. Would you agree with that? Is there anything else we need to cover off?
Are we going to make more funny camera sounds?
Oh, yes, that was a good point actually, because when we were chatting before, when the first time we actually heard the Bronica rock the world with its shutter, we sort of went out and grabbed our favourite cameras to make, or I'm not sure favourite, in my case it was one of my favourite cameras, but to just try some shutter sounds. And so Johnny, do you want to play shutter sound for our listeners?
Do it this way. Fire off the sound, and then we'll see if we can guess what it is.
Okay.
Here we go.
Is that an electronic camera?
You want to hear that again? All right.
It's. I think there's a mirror in there. Am I right? Is there a mirror in there?
There is a mirror.
Yeah.
There is a mirror.
Is it electronic?
It is electronic. It is an auto. You're hearing a shutter sound, a mirror, and an auto advance.
Pentax ZX whatever.
No. It is a Pentax. Oh wait, no. I guess you are. Yes, I guess that's right. You threw me off with that Z thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's a Pentax ZX5.
Oh, sweet. That was easy.
Yeah.
That was a good guess.
Or I guess depending on where you are in the world, is it a what's the other MZ? It has a different it has a different nomenclature in different countries.
Yeah.
So it's either the ZM or the ZX, depending on where you are.
All right, 1-0.
Okay.
Very, very good, Perry. Very good.
Well, have a go at this one then. Oops, switch it on. You already know it's electronic now.
Ugh. Oh, that sounds really electronic. Oh,
It's good. It's good, isn't it? That.
Oh, what? Ew.
You can go with clues. I'll give you clues.
Is it your?
SLR?
It's an SLR.
Is it a Contax of some sort?
Oh, it is.
RTS?
It's an RX.
Ah.
There you
Okay.
go. I think, and I've done. It's that. Yeah, Perry has got an advantage on there because he says he remembers every single show, and I've done this before on the show. So.
Oh, you have.
Yeah.
Okay.
So it's no surprise that Perry got that one right. Well done, all the same. Well done for using that institutional memory of yours.
All right, I got a wacky one for you guys. Try this one out. If I can actually get it to work. You hear that?
What the hell was that?
Let's do it again.
That's a Ford Model T car horn.
One more time.
It sounds like it's on its last legs, doesn't it?
Yeah. I thought my Pentax sounded bad.
Is it a Leica R?
No. Go for the clues. See if you can get it.
I don't know where to start with that.
It doesn't even sound like a camera, Perry.
Oh, it's totally a camera.
Do it again.
Okay. It's a little wacky to actually get it to do this.
Wow.
I'm lost. I just wouldn't even know where to start with that.
Oh man.
Come on, go by elimination.
Yeah, is it something Nikon?
No.
Is it German?
Nope.
Is it Japanese?
Yes.
Is it electronic?
Oh yeah.
Is it autofocus?
No. What? Come on.
Well, it could have been a point and shoot.
No. It's definitely not a point and shoot.
Oh.
Is it a leaf shutter?
No, hold on.
That's correct. That is very correct.
Yeah.
That's not necessarily leading me any closer to the answer, but
Is it medium format?
Yes.
Yeah, because it's is that a Pentax 645?
Nope.
Is it a 645 format 120 camera?
It is.
Bronica?
Yep.
That's where I was going next.
Yep. So which Bronica is it?
They're all the same. Jesus, they're all.
No, they're not. They're not. It's going to be one of those flat ones, isn't it? Like I don't know what they're called. Texas Leica kind of style rangefinder.
No, it's not your. That's not your.
Yes,
Bronica. It is.
It's the Bronica RF645.
Get out of here! Really?
Yeah, man. Yeah. The weird meow at the end of the shutter is the shutter recocking. So a lot of people think that it's a really long shutter delay, but actually the leaf shutter fires and it's almost silent, and then you get that weird little like.
Right, it's all that noise is everything other than the shutter.
Yeah, I don't want one now. Killed my gas on that one.
All right, but to its credit, it sounds like it's actually probably that noise is probably very quiet.
It's very quiet. I had to hold it right up to the mic. Yeah. I mean, it's quieter than the other Bronica.
Right. Wow, is that weird?
Well, yeah, it's this weirdest sounding shutter of any camera I've got, but I love it. It's one of my favorites.
Well, there we go. Well, on that note,
that's good. Very, very good.
Yeah, let's start to wind things down. I just want to say thank you to those people that have donated to us via coffee. That's ko-fi.com and search Classic Lenses Podcast. And we actually devoid of messages this week. So, but thank you, Lawrence. Thank you, James. Thank you, Waze. Robbie J has put a smiley face on. So thank you, Robbie. And Nigel Cliff has said, and he's talking about last week's show. Once we got the culinary references out of the way, another excellent show. Any chance of a week where you just talk about photography? I think we've actually managed that this week, haven't we?
Yeah, I was going to say, I was wondering if he's stuck with us this far, if he's going to make it through this. But I think this episode was in good territory for Nigel. Yeah.
So a successful week for Nigel then for listening. That's great. Okay, well let's wrap things up. Have you got any shout outs, Johnny?
I don't think so. Not this week.
Okay, and Perry?
Two quick ones. One to Devlin Cook for hanging out with me in Hong Kong. He's texting me as we speak, and he's got his rolls, 6 rolls that he shot in Hong Kong in his Patterson tank and ready to go.
All right.
So that'll be cool to see his results. And secondly, who's my second shout out to? Quick shout out to the folks at the Grainy Days podcast. Because one thing that Devlin told me while he was here is he was listening to that, and the guys on that show had Mike Padua on, who has a very popular YouTube channel. And I think it was Dustin gave me a nice shout out at the end as like a photographer whose pictures he actually likes, and that's always the biggest compliment. So thanks, guys, over at Grainy Days.
Excellent.
You guys are cool. I like you now.
Okay. And I haven't really got any shout-outs this week, other than to say that every Tuesday we've got the Six Towns Darkroom in Stoke-on-Trent. So if you want to come along and develop some film or just talk about film cameras, because we just like talking about that kind of stuff anyway, get in touch with me. Just drop me a line via one of the many ways that people can get in touch with us, and I'll go through mine in a second, but let's just go through Johnny's first. How can people keep in touch with you?
I'm at Sisson Photography on Instagram, and you can catch up with me at Central Camera Company in Chicago most days of the week, and you can keep up with the podcast at classiclensespodcast.com. You can send the podcast an email at classiclensespodcast@gmail.com. And you can read the spectacular show notes for each episode over in the Best Vintage Lens Instagram group over there. And
I was going to say, Ricardo really laid into you this week as well.
Yeah, that was good. Yeah, it was good. It was really good.
How about you, Perry?
I am perryge.com and on Flickr and Instagram, same thing.
That's cool. And I'm on Instagram as Simon Forster Photographic. Twitter is Simon4. That's Simon and FOR. I'm on Flickr, where I've got loads of albums of things I've done with different lenses. If you just look up my name, Simon Forster, I think you can find me that way. Still nothing added in the last 6 months or so, but need to do something about that. What else? I've got a website which is Simon Forster Photographic, where you can buy FICAS adapters.
What was that again?
FICAS. And apologies to people in Italy. And I've also got a eBay shop. If you do a search for It's Fozzy on ebay.co.uk, hopefully you can find me there, where I've got more FICAS adapters, some K&F adapters, and actually quite a few lenses on there at the moment, so you might want to take a look over there. So that's pretty much it. You can find us all in the Facebook group. I was going to say Photography with Classic Lenses again. Yes, we do go in there, but we have our own group, which is the Classic Lenses Podcast Facebook group. I want to thank Kevin MacLeod of Incompetech.com for our Octo Blues theme music. And then finally, it's been great that you've been with us. I'm glad some of you are enjoying the show. And until next time, if you can, be like Carl.
Wow.
Excellent.
It almost sounds like a goat. I mean, it just doesn't sound at all like, if you played that song or that sound to most people, I don't think they would have any clue that that's a camera.
I know. It's just bizarre.
Yeah. It's like the cow in the can kind of sound almost, or something.
It does sound. It sounds like an animal.
Yeah,
like,
it does.
Kind of animals cry.
I could. If you wanted, as a transition, I could say, like, "Hey Perry, I heard you had a little outing with Captain Cook as well, or something."
Yeah,
that's cool.
That's
it.
Okay,
but when you do it, don't say and Perry like that. You know, just.
What do you mean?
Yeah, just do it like you just did when we were just talking there.
I can do that. Hey Perry. That was just for Simon for the outtakes.